On this episode, I have compiled some of my best IKEA hacks, and this is a compilation style episode, so sit back, relax, or maybe even DIY right along with me. But let's get started on our first IKEA hack, which took on the task of going toe-to-toe with Pottery Barn. We are going to be knocking off the Cameron Globe light fixture. This was about $150, and I thought we could do it for less. And then I found, and please pardon me as I slaughter and embarrass my Scandinavian heritage, the Faux light fixture at IKEA. I think it was around $26, and to flip this, it is going to be super easy. So they do have the Faux in a brass originally, so if you can find that will cut out a step and make your life so much easier. I couldn't find it, so I ended up having to start out by spray painting the section that we needed gold. Used hardly any paint, and I just sprayed that section. But if you can find the brass one to begin with, you can forgo that step altogether and just go to the next step, which is where we tape off what we don't want painted, that we want to leave gold, and like just protect everything the best we can. And then we spray paint the next section in a flat black spray paint. Once that's dry, I wanted to switch out the globe part. So I picked up a globe one from Lowe's that was about $8. This one was clear, but it did have a seated glass. Now our inspiration one was not seated from what I could tell online. It was just a clear glass. Then I wanted to go ahead and install it. Now I'm not a licensed electrician, so I'm not gonna give a tutorial on that, but I'm comfortable doing this a lot of times. So I uninstalled the old light fixture, but when I removed it, this is what I saw. So I headed to Lowe's to get a small ceiling medallion. This really did mask that ugly ring, and I didn't have to do any drywall repair. So I finished installing our light fixture. I put in a similar light bulb, that kind of candlestick kind of one, and then I just pushed our new globe light into place. It's very lightweight, and it does kind of cinch it into place. When you look at actually how we did the hack, it was extremely easy. Spray paint and a new globe and call it a day, and you have a near identical match. I mean, there's a few subtle changes, but if you didn't know any better, you would think that this IKEA light fixture was absolutely from Pottery Barn. And guess what? The Pottery Barn version was $150 without tax, shipping, or anything, and our version came in at $35. That is massive savings. For our next IKEA hack, we are going to be knocking off the MALCOM C table from Pottery Barn. It was $400, and I found something that looked very similar. Now the direction it went was a little bit different, but like the overall look of it was near identical. We are going to be using the FIXTURE little end table. The first thing that we did is assemble it, and it did come with a piece of glass, but we are going to hang on to that for something in the future. We don't need it for this one. To kind of mimic the top, we needed to kind of piece something together anyways. So I picked up a 2x4. One 2x4 will get the job done, which is pretty inexpensive. We measured 2 exterior pieces, and I believe they were around 22 inches. You're gonna wanna make sure you take your own measurements, but I believe that's where they were at. And then we cut 2 at about 15 inches for the center, and then 2 more that were about 7 inches for the end pieces that are in the in-between. Then we had all of these little individual pieces, and we needed to kind of assemble them into one solid piece. So the way we're going to attach all these pieces is by doing some pocket holes with a Kreg jig. Our pocket holes are going to go in this way, and then I think I'm gonna do some that go in this way, so you can see kind of what we're doing. With all of our pocket holes ready to go, I started assembling everything, and so I just went screw by screw and assembled our tabletop. But the thing with 2x4s, and this was kind of a bummer deal, is there is a little curve edge on these. If you can find the most square 2x4s you can, that is a really good way to go, because these ones ended up being pretty rounded and I wanted to fill in the gaps kind of similar to our Pottery Barn one. The first thing I did is I started sanding it down to see it just wasn't working. So what I ended up doing is creating a DIY wood filler that I pushed into the cracks and let dry, and then you go in and you sand it all down really well. It did still have like a rustic feel to it, which is fine because the Inspiration one also has kind of a rustic flair to it. I ended up using a antiquing glaze, and the reason I do this is because I found that that mimics very closely the color of the Pottery Barn pieces. I've used it on like a Pottery Barn ladder. It matched up really nicely on that. It's just the Waverly antiquing wax, but the Folk Art one, they're owned by the same company. They're very similar. So either one of those antiquing waxes would be good. I used a Watco clear coat in a satin finish, and I just sprayed that on. What I like about it is it's non-yellowing and it dries to the touch in about 30 minutes. Then I just flipped our dried top upside down, drove in some screws into the bottom and flipped it over, and we had a very close knockoff of this Pottery Barn version. Okay, remember their version was $400 without tax or fees or anything. Our version was just $40. That's 10% of the cost. I like ours. It's a little rustic, but so is Pottery Barn's. But I just wanted to show you that you could take a piece of furniture and really transition it. I know this is possible to do for Pottery Barn because I've seen a lot of mimicking and a lot of similar pieces from IKEA, but there are pieces that you can get that Pottery Barn look for a fraction of the cost, and that is awesome. For my next IKEA hack were these white ledge shelves. Now they actually have a lot of similar colors, so you don't have to do it in the white. There's a lot of wood options that match up with the original ones, and it is so much cheaper. I don't even know if I can really call this a hack. It literally looks just like the original. So the white for white, they were about the same size. I just bought them. And then all we needed to do is install them. You need to have some drywall anchors with the matching screws. Use a level, kind of make sure they're level, mark where the holes are, pre-drill for those drywall anchors, then you just tap, tap, tap them into place. And then once they're in place, you can just screw those screws through the front of the shelf, and then you have a very sturdy shelf. This is the only part that was a little janky. To cover those screw holes on your shelves, IKEA provides stickers, but I went ahead and used them, and it really does disappear. You don't notice them once you cover up the screw head with those stickers. But when you look at the cost savings, yeah, I'm okay with a white sticker. It totally disappears. You don't notice, and the shelves look so amazing. Now you can see this in my bathroom, decorated and kind of cute, but I'm gonna be honest and real with you. As much as I would like to leave it like this, we actually need the additional storage in our bathroom. So all of this is gonna go, and all of my hair products and jams and jellies and goops are probably gonna go on these shelves. It's gonna be function over form this time. Okay, so for my next couple of IKEA hacks, they're both gonna be topiaries, but I'm first gonna start out with this one. It was $480. You heard that right. $480. No way. If you want to do this next hack, I would recommend running to IKEA. They are kind of, I think, phasing out their topiary balls in the Fika, and they were $26, and it's a pretty large topiary ball. Now to assemble this, it was actually really simple. So the first thing that I did was take a toilet plunger stick, yeah, from a Dollar Tree plunger, just the stick portion, and I drilled 2 holes in kind of opposing direction. So drill hole this way, drill, so it's like a plus sign in the top. I did that kind of in the grooves where you turn it in. You could use a wood dowel for this. You could go out to your yard and grab a branch, which is kind of similar to what they had, like a thick branch, and just cut that off. Use what you have. Once I had these holes drilled into the top, I went ahead and used that same antiquing glaze and put that on the whole thing. Then I had this black pot already on hand from a past project. I don't remember which one it was, but it started out as a terracotta pot that cost me $2 or $3. It was very inexpensive, and I painted it out in a black chalk paint. Then I took one of the moss sheets that I can get at the $1.25 tree, and I cut out a round circle. Like, it doesn't even need to be perfect. It's pretty forgiving. And once I had it about the right size in the center, I kind of clipped out like a plus sign. Then I took a piece of floral foam from the $1.25 tree, shoved that down into the base of our pot, then put our moss down over the top of it. You can glue this all down if you'd like. I didn't. Then we took our toilet bowl plunger stick thing and we threaded through a couple of pieces of wire, and I kind of tied each piece onto that and then twisted it together. But then I found a hole big enough to kind of shove our plunger stick through, and then we shoved it all the way till it touched the inside of the top of the ball. Then we kind of make sure that our ball is centered up appropriately, and then we pull those wires through, and then you kind of, there's a lot of little plastic pieces in these topiary balls, and then you kind of wrap it around one of those plastic pieces and twist it together. Then you can cut off the excess of the wire and then tuck the remaining portion back down inside the topiary ball, and then you've got your like little lollipop. Then we take our topiary ball and then we're gonna shove it right down into the center of our base, and then the plus sign is important because you just shove it through that and it will give it a nice snug fit around the wood piece. And that's it. Really easy. You could definitely get this done in under like 5 minutes. It's a super easy DIY. Even with our kind of expensive Fega ball, that big one, we're in this to maybe like $32-ish, and that is just, I mean, you saved $450 and it took you about 5 minutes to put together. So, and it looks so good. I personally don't think that there is really any difference between the inspiration one and this one. Okay, that last topiary was easy. Our next topiary could be even easier, believe it or not. So I found this one on Pottery Barn for $200, and then I picked this topiary up at IKEA for $26. Now, I think as it is, doing nothing to it, it's a pretty good dupe. You could just leave it alone, and honestly, that's what I would do. But the inspiration one did have olives on it, so I went ahead and picked up a couple of stems at Hobby Lobby, and I just kind of glued them in and kind of just placed them in if you wanted that olive look. Now, you could actually build one from scratch. I've seen a lot of tutorials out there where you just take a stick and drill holes in it and glue it in. It's very similar to the cherry blossom one that I did a couple of episodes back. So you could even get this look of this Pottery Barn one for even cheaper. We started with this one, we added in some of the olives. Looks pretty good, right? So $26 to $30 versus $200. I love those savings. It's so easy. Okay, how did we do with those Pottery Barn hacks? Did you like them?
A lot has changed since we last spoke.
Our next IKEA hack is taking this sort sew rug and making it into a purse. It does require a little sewing. So what we're gonna do is we are going to take our rug, remove the big ginormous tag off of it, and then we're gonna kind of fold it into thirds so that it's kind of gonna be like a messenger flap. Now we're gonna do this kind of inside out, so like the tag side out, then flip it, and then the tag side will be in. Clip the bottom portion that's going to be the purse section, and we are gonna sew down the sides. You could stop right here and put on the strap and be done with it, but I wanted ours to have a little bit more structure, so we're gonna kind of do like a box pleat. What we're gonna do to do that is we're gonna make a triangle on the corners, as you see me doing here, and then we're gonna go from that point up 2 inches, and we're gonna put in a pin, and that's where our stitch is gonna be. And then we're gonna put a couple more pins on either side so we can kind of have a line to follow. And then we're gonna just stitch that across on the angle like so, and we're gonna do it on either side. Now this will kind of give us like a bottom and give us a little structure to this purse, which is awesome. I decided to go ahead and put in some little loops on either side to attach our strap to that we're gonna be making here in just a second. And I stitched that on after the fact using a zigzag stitch. I think this worked out fine, but honestly, you could probably take some loops and sew them into the seam so they're kind of more on the outside. And I kind of like stood it up, and it felt like the top section was hanging out a little bit too much now that we did our little box pleat on the bottom. So I decided to just at the top fold it over and stitch it in like an inch on either side, and that just kind of narrowed the top flap just a touch. All of these extra steps are totally optional. It's time to add a strap, and I thought it would look really cool and kind of have like a boho flare that we're kind of already having here if we did one that was made out of beads. So I just took some kind of thicker jute twine, and I threaded these wooden beads that I get in bulk off of Amazon. They're such a good price when you can buy them in bulk. I'll link them below. And I just strung them, and I made my strap about 36 inches long, but you could kind of just take a measuring tape and measure it to see how long you think you need it. Then we are going to loop that through and kind of tie it onto those loops that we sewed onto place. And I did like a triple knot. I'm not an expert knot tire, but I tied it on the best I could, and then I did the same to the other side. So my last step in this process is to just kind of finish it off. I tied on a faux button. Honestly, the top flap is long enough and kind of heavy enough that I didn't really feel like it needed to be kind of buttoned down like it was. It's not going anywhere. So this is more decorative. I picked up this button at Michael's, and I tied it on with some jute twine. I didn't, I stitched it on with kind of a heavy needle to make sure it was really secure. I just kind of tied it off on the back and then cut it. And I think this bag is super cute. I think it would make a really great gift for yourself. You can always give yourself a gift, right? Or somebody in your life. I think that they would really like this. So for our next project, I found this cutting board at IKEA. It had a really cool shape. I didn't actually want to do much to this one. This time I decided to just kind of keep it simple, and I wanted to kind of do something just to the upper portion and kind of do a color wash in black in this. So all I did was kind of tape it off. I just mixed some chalk paint with some water until it was kind of runny, and kind of just did it on the upper portion and let it dry on all the way around. There was a couple of areas that did bleed. I was able to very carefully sand it off, and I ended up sanding off the whole upper portion where I painted the black and kind of giving it a distressed look anyway. So I was able to mask that. You couldn't really tell. Honestly, it looks great in the end. And that's it. It was like so easy to just do that. Honestly, I kind of like the simplicity of this one this time around. Now that you're with him. I found this wood Lazy Susan. I'd never really noticed it before. It was beautiful. It had a really nice richness to the wood. And so we are going to wood burn a monogram. Now I'm going to include a free printable of all of the letters of the alphabet. So I will link that in the description box below. You can use it as a template. For me, I like to do wood burning with a stencil on my Cricut machine. So I just cut this out on my Cricut. Use permanent vinyl if you're making a stencil and you're putting it on wood. It will save you a whole lot of frustration. Once you do get it down, I did something a little bit different this time. I used a different marker. Now, I usually use scorch marker. I love scorch marker, but I kind of wanted to try something different out to see if there's something better. And I did feel like I got really good results this time around. And less is more. You don't want to go crazy and go overboard or you will get bleeding. So once you got that down, you peel back the stencil and just very carefully went around my stencil, hyper focused heat, and it burned it fast, and I had less scorch marks other places. Once you got the image burned on there, I have this concoction, I think it's somewhere on my Instagram account. It's a natural wood conditioner. It's got like coconut oil, beeswax, and lemon juice in it or something like that. It smells really good. And that's what I condition all of my wood pieces in, and I've had good success with that. So I love the simplicity of this. Who wouldn't want a monogrammed Lazy Susan that's as beautiful as this as a gift? Use it as a charcuterie board. There's so many possibilities. Okay, so our next hacks have a little bit of a French flair to them. So for our next IKEA hack, we are going to be doing a French country twist on the Tarva dresser. The first thing I set out to do is to build it. So I got that mostly built, and I wanted to add some scalloped edge trimming to it. Look how cute this trim is. I think it's going to make an adorable kind of French feeling addition to our Tarva dresser, so I'm really excited. We've got the measurements. Let's make our cuts. I'm going to make a cut here right in the center, and then we will make sure that it's evened up on both sides. So to attach our trim, I just took some scrap wood and nailed it to the underside of our dresser. That gave me something to nail it in on the front side to add this scallop trim. And I really feel like adding this scallop trim that I picked up at the Home Depot really gave it that French flair. And so that was such a good addition. Then I proceeded to finish building the drawers and all of that. And then with that built, I had bought some additional kind of pencil trim. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but it's pretty small trim. So to each side of the dresser, I wanted to add some picture box molding just to give it a little bit of interest to this kind of boring piece. And then I took the molding and covered up the seam where that scalloped trim met the dresser, and it really gave it a pretty finished look. So with all of that additional molding added to our dresser, we putty all the nail holes, and then we let that dry, and then of course we sand it down and then give it a good wipe down, and then it's ready for paint. To prime it, I used some chalk paint that I had on hand. It works as a great primer. I also had some primer. It was just easier to grab my chalk paint, so you can use regular primer as well. And then I used some leftover trim paint that I have all throughout my house, and that's a semi-gloss in Sherwin-Williams Extra White, and then I just painted that all over my dresser to give it a nice foundation. And kind of the piece de resistance is I found this French floral rub-on transfer, and all you do is kind of lay it on the front of your dresser and take like a popsicle stick. It actually came with a piece of wood, and you very carefully rub it onto the front of your dresser. And anywhere that there is a drawer seam, you can take like a straight edge blade and kind of cut that down, and then you just rub it, and then peel it back as it rubs on. And then I always just kind of take my hand and go over the top just to make sure everything is securely in place. But what is so cool about this is then it looks like you've got this hand painted image. So with that image on, then I wanted to add some crystal knobs. And so we drilled some holes for that and then added those beautiful knobs. I decided to go one step further and paint some pink stripes on the side. I just want to seal the edges of your painter's tape with something. A lot of times I'll use the undercoat color. This time I just used some clear matte sealer that I use on chalk paint sometimes, and let it dry really quick. And then of course put on my pink chalk paint. I started off with like a brighter pink, and then I toned it down with Folk Art Barely Pink chalk paint, and I did some stripes on the side. And then of course when you pull back the tape, it reveals perfectly straight lines, which is awesome. In the end, oh my word, this might be my favorite IKEA hack I've ever done. The transformation is from about as boring as you can get to something that is so pretty, so feminine. I don't really have a great place to display this, so for now it's going in my craft room until I figure out a better plan, because it's not going anywhere. I absolutely adore this piece. It is so pretty. So So for our next IKEA hack, I'm not exactly sure what this is called, but it's Moppe, and I'm gonna call it a mini dresser. There are a lot of possibilities that you could do with this, so I may hack this next one again, but this is what I did for this time around. So what I did is I took a couple of packages of paint stick, and we are going to literally trim this out like a shaker style effect, if you will. I just took it out onto my miter saw and cut them down there. So I did the sides long and then the horizontal parts shorter. And then on the bottom one, I kind of made a faux 2 drawers, even though it was one long one. Then I glued all of our pieces on with hot glue and made sure that the seams were as tight as possible. And I used 14 paint sticks in total. Also, while I was out cutting down the paint sticks, I saw my scrap pile, you know, some scrap wood, and I decided to add some feet to this little dresser to just kind of lift it up a little bit, and I just cut some squares out of the blocks. They were like 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. Easy peasy, and I ended up gluing those on the bottom as well. This is Gorilla Hot Glue. It's a very strong hold, it's very hot, and if you get it right on there, it's a very strong hold and should be fine for our purposes. With that all on, I decided I wanted to add some wood knobs, and I did kind of X marks to find center and drilled holes in the center for some knobs and then attached those. With all of the embellishments added, it was time to paint, and I used the Sage colored chalk paint by Folk Art. It's kind of a blue-green color. It's really pretty, and it kind of matches some of my other decor in my main area, so I thought it would work perfectly. And then I let the paint dry, and then once it was dry, I decided to rough it up around the edges, especially kind of working on the edges to kind of curve them off and soften that look a little bit. And that's it. I thought this was a relatively easy hack. It gave it totally different look. It's gonna be in my entryway, a great place to toss the mail, my keys, all that, kind of like a little workstation, because it seems like a lot of stuff gets kind of dropped there, but I really love the way this looks. I think this IKEA hack turned out good, but what do you think? So for our next IKEA hack, I am going to be doing the Hektar floor lamp over again. About a year ago, I did the Hektar floor lamp, and I just gave it like a really quick mini makeover. So this time around, I wanted to make sure it matched all of the other lighting in my living room now, because it really kind of stands out. It was like a subtle difference, but just different enough that it was kind of driving me crazy. So almost everything in my living room is kind of matte black finish and then gold. So the first thing I did is I kind of disassembled it a little bit, and then I flipped the shade upside down, and we spray painted the inside of that in 18 karat gold. We let that dry. I also did the little nuts on the side in that gold, and then also the little hanging top part of the lamp section in that bright gold. With that all painted gold, I let that fully dry, and then what I did is I flipped over the shade and wrapped up that top portion in a plastic bag. Then I went ahead and spray painted the rest of the lamp in a matte black finish to kind of match everything else in the room. And then I got this really cool kind of crystal, I don't know what it's called, like a shade. And all you have to do is slip that on the underside of the light bulb and then screw the light bulb back in. And then you have this beautiful crystal thing, which matches some of the other elements in the room as well. So from the original piece from IKEA, which was all brown with a white drum, to this, which is a little bit more glitzy, a little bit more glam, I love it. I think it looks super cute, but it was driving me a little crazy, and now it's not. It's really pretty. I love how it looks, but what do you think? I'm going to be using this cylinder vase set that I got at IKEA, and we are going to take this larger vase, and I created a stencil on my Cricut machine and cut that out. I really liked this Damask pattern. I thought it was really pretty and feminine, and I thought it would look really cool frosted. First, we gotta weed out all of the excess of what we plan to not use. This was a little bit tedious. Once it was all weeded, I put on my transfer tape. Once we get that all on, I wrapped the entire thing around our vase. I went ahead and got some spray on frosted glass effect. This one's by Krylon, and all I did is take it outside, flip the glass vase over and spray 2 generous coats and let it fully dry. And then we brought it back in and peeled back painstakingly all of that vinyl. But the end result on this was just beautiful. It's so feminine, it's beautiful, it's pretty. It looks so good with some flowers in it, or you could use it as a hurricane for a candle and use it as like a luminaire. And so it's just beautiful. Which brings me to kind of the same thing, but in this one, I just spaced out some blue painter's tape and rotated it to create stripes, just kind of wrapping it all the way around. I flipped it over like I did on the Damask one and just sprayed it on the underside. That way you don't even really need the plastic bag in the center. And honestly, I think this is a really cute companion piece to the Damask one. They coordinate, but they're not overly matchy-matchy. The same thing, put flowers in it, put a candle in it and use it as like a luminary, and it's just beautiful. I also thought it would look really cute to use washi tape and make the stripe a little bit smaller. So super easy to put together and really elevates this glass and makes it look super cute. What do you think? For my next project, we are going to be making a purse out of this pillow cover. The first thing that we did is snip off all of those tassels, and then what I did is I folded it in half to just kind of see how the purse would shape out, and I decided it was going to be a little too long and skinny. What I ended up doing is cutting off half of that aqua stripe that was a little bit fatter right down the middle, and just cut that off and set that aside. And then what I decided to do was leave in the zipper. So we're gonna put the outside wovens pattern together, like the finished side out, and we are going to kind of channel stitch or stitch in the ditch or whatever you call it down that seam, trying to get as close as we can to the zipper with still leaving enough room for that zipper head to move up and down, but you don't want it to be like super obvious. And then I kind of just stitched back and forth all the way up, and then make sure you tie it off really, really good. I would recommend something more like an upholstery thread or something when you're gonna do this. I decided to take off that cotton muslin off of our cutoff piece, and then I stitched across the top, and then I pinned it to our inner lining, and I made sure to separate it from the finished side and stitched around the 3 sides. Now with the pocket in, we are going to flip right sides together, which is the finished side in, and we are going to stitch up the other side. To finish off this purse, we needed to put some hooks on in the corners for that strap to connect to. I just took some twine because I needed it to be really sturdy because it will be supporting some weight. And so I took some twine and stitched these hooks on. Then I wanted to add some magnetic snaps, so I found center and did about a pinky width from the top, very technical, and stitched that into place by hand. With the purse complete, now it's time to really talk about the strap. Now I had a couple of fabrics on hand, some just heavier weight decorator fabric, but you could use any kind of fabric you want. So the first thing you're gonna do is cut the length that you want. I made mine 42 inches by 5.5 inches, and the most important thing is that 5.5 inches. As far as the length, you can kind of take a tape measure and measure it to the height that you want. Once we have our pieces cut out, we take it to iron and get it really nice and pressed out, and then you're gonna fold it in half and press a nice crease in that. And then you're gonna take the edges and fold them in and make quarters, because we're gonna kind of fold it in on itself. And so So you press that and then you fold it all over and press the whole thing down. Once that's well pressed, we're gonna take it to our sewing machine and zigzag the edges on both sides. And then we're gonna straight stitch down both sides to create a really nice finished look, but also to close that one seam on the one side. Now I found these hooks at the Hobby Lobby, and so we slide those edges in, wrap it around it, and we do a straight stitch back and forth. And I do that like 4 or 5 times just to make sure it's on there really good, because again, it's gonna be holding some weight and we just wanna make sure that's really secure. It's easy to just snap those onto those hooks on the purse and switch them out as you want. I love that we left the zipper in on that one side, because now we have a really cool hidden storage pocket that you could slide valuables in, or just lots of little things that are secure and you can't find. So it's like a little hidden compartment, which was really fun, I think. And then I love the magnetic snap. It makes it easy to open and close. It's not a hassle. I love that as an added addition. And then of course the little pocket that we added. I'm so glad I did that. You can toss your phone in there, or you know, some gum or lip gloss or whatever you've got going on. It's nice to have just a little extra pocket there, right? And then you know, it's just so easy to switch out the straps, so you can have several straps. And isn't this just kind of a fun idea? Have you ever heard of pink depression glass? This beautiful cake plate belonged to my great-grandmother. This was a very popular glassware in the 1930s, and now it's kind of seeing a resurgent now. So when I saw this beautiful kind of scalloped edge plate at IKEA, I knew I wanted to do something with it almost immediately, but I thought it would be kind of fun to create something to go along with this one. So I took this big platter and I wanted to make another cake plate or pedestal based item. So all I did to do this is I took this epoxy kit that I got at the Dollar Tree, squeezed this epoxy out, the 2-part epoxy, and you mix it up with like a popsicle stick or something like that. And then I very carefully went around the edges of this smaller cake plate, and then I attached it to our larger pink dish that we got from IKEA, and then you let it set. It actually sets up kind of quick, but just to be sure, I would let it set up 12 hours just before you start to use it or anything like that. But in the end, look at this. So we had like a plain but cute with the scalloped edging dish before, but the two of them combined together look super cute, and it looks adorable like it was meant to be. And then I can stack them together and make kind of like a tiered tray, and you can display confections, your treats, or you could do decor in them, or you can kind of do a combination of them. But I really love this, and all it was combining 2 different things together to create and elevate this piece even more. And how easy was that? Seriously, super easy. So our next IKEA hack is a black cloche. Maybe you want to elevate it and make it a little bit fancier, and that's what we're going to do on this one with a couple of really easy ideas. Similar to our pink cake plate, what we are going to do is add a pedestal base to this. Now I had this white cupcake stand that I picked up from Hobby Lobby, and I just took it outside and spray painted it in a couple of coats of flat black spray paint and let that fully dry. It matched up the black cloche already very well. And then I also had this kind of black finial. All we're gonna do is take some of that epoxy, mix it together, and very generously, but not over the top, put that on the pedestal base and put that in the center and let that dry. And we did the same exact thing on the top with the finial, trying to get that center spot. And you could use this for seasonal decor, treats, however you want to style it. But this is just a super easy way to elevate it, and it no longer looks like it's from IKEA. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what your style is. But this is very transferable to what your style is, and I like the flexibility in that. For our next hack, hack, I found another cloche, and this time it was a little bit bigger, a little grander, and it was gold, and I knew I wanted to elevate that. I had this crystal knob in my stash. It was silver, and the base of this was gold, and so I decided to spray paint it gold. So first I wrapped the crystal knob in some painter's tape, and then I took it outside to spray it in my favorite 18 karat gold spray paint. I noticed that the gold wasn't an exact match. So I went ahead and spray painted the base again, even though it was already gold. I just did a light dusting so that it would coordinate and that it would have been fine. And then it's the same process as the one that we just did, mixing up the epoxy and putting it on the candle base, attaching that. And then we did the same thing with the crystal knob on top and let that dry. And it, like I said, it does set up pretty quickly, but I wouldn't try to handle it or like lift it by the knob for at least 12 hours after the fact. But I think that this is so cute. I love it. You can put whatever decor. This would be really good place to put seasonal decor, everyday decor, easy to switch out, super fun, super cute. And I hope you like it. Now this next hack is the easiest of them all. So what I thought is this would be a really good opportunity to create like a whiteboard that's customized to whatever look you want. And it's simply taking one of the Ribba frames. All I did was remove out the backing and take everything out. I set aside the matte just because I didn't want like the variation in texture. And I set that aside because it is a nice matte and it's included and it fits great. And then we had the opportunity to pick whatever backing you want. You could use fabric, you could use wrapping paper, you could use a peel and stick vinyl, whatever you want to kind of put in that has the texture that you like or the look that you like. In my case, I just used this wrapping paper that I picked up from Home Goods recently, and it's kind of like in a really pretty rose gold, and I just traced it out and cut it out to fit. I printed out what I wanted it to say on the whiteboard, and then I traced it with my glass pen, which I really liked. You can use dry erase markers, but these glass markers are so cool. They have like a prettier sheen to them, and they're more like paint. And I just traced what I wanted it to say with the glass over the top, kind of like put it on the top, and it worked out really good. And so then we put it all back together, and you have a whiteboard. The idea of this is just to be a functional piece for you that you can write little quick shopping lists or whatnot, but customized to your decor, your look, and what you like. So I hope that that is like helpful to you. So I hope you enjoyed that. We are going to be doing a hack on the, watch me slaughter this name, Monogrammed lidded box. The first thing we're going to do to this box is we are going to drill a little hole for a handle that we're going to put in. And I wanted to drill that first, and then what we're going to do is we're going to give it a whitewash. So we're going to take some clear glaze from Waverly, and we're going to mix it with a plaster colored chalk paint, and we're going to just shake that up. It's a glaze that I've been using on a lot of my whitewashing projects, and I simply just brush it onto the box and then kind of wipe it off with like a dry towel. You don't want to use something that's damp because I think it will take too much of it off. We kind of want to leave some of it on and kind of blend it in and just go over the entire top and bottom of the box and then let that dry. Then I had this really cool two-piece knob. I wanted to put a little touch of black on it. Now you could do another color, and I actually think it would look really cool, but I did decide to go ahead with a black spray paint, and I spray painted that on, and I take some black chalk paint and just chalk paint the knob. It's a much more matted down finish, which I think will work better. And then I thought it would be really cool to kind of like add a little tassel on it. I landed on just doing one out of jute twine, and all I did is wrap it around my hand like 30 times, and then you take another piece and tie a knot on it. You can cut off the bottom to kind of like make it more of like a tassel. Then you take the jute twine, wrap it around, make a knot, and then I let the excess kind of become part of that tassel. You'll notice that it's all kind of curly, and that kind of happens with jute twine. And the way you get it all straight again is once you have your tassel the way you want it, go saturate it in water and then wring out the excess and then let it dry. And you can kind of like, as it dries, make sure it dries nice and flat. Then I assembled it all together. Another little hack for you, if you have a screw that's just a little bit too long, I keep a bag of washers that are in the size of a cabinet screw. You can screw 1 or 2 of them on, and that will shorten it up and tighten it so you don't have a loose knob. I really like how this box turned out. Right here, I'm just displaying it in my last bathroom renovation. What do you think of this box? Our next DIY is another toilet paper holder kind of elevation. I think it looked really cool the way it was, honestly, but I thought there was a fun way we could elevate it and kind of give it like an Art Deco feel. I'm just gonna add some gold accents. So what I started out by doing is I taped it off where I wanted to paint, and I thought it would be okay if I just very carefully brushed it on and didn't follow my very strict striping rule, which I usually do to prevent any bleeding. I thought it would work out okay because the rub and buff is not like super runny, it's very creamy. I thought we would be fine. I was wrong. Follow this very helpful tip. Before you put it on, what we're gonna do is we're gonna seal the edges. And in this case, I just used some black chalk paint because it was kind of already a matte black finish, and I figured if it bled, you wouldn't be able to tell. And I was right, because there was like a little bleeding of the black. And once that black chalk paint is dry, then go back over the top with a rub and buff until it's like nice and full, and let that dry. And I also did like the outside round circles on the little toilet paper ring and let that fully dry. Then we pulled back the tape and the lines are crisp, and it just looks better. It really does. And then I'm just gonna install this on the side of my bathroom vanity, and that's it for this. Just that little extra gives it kind of like a really fun vibe. But if you have like more of like a modern farmhouse look, you could just leave it as is. Well, I hope you enjoyed those IKEA hacks. If so, here's 20 more that I know you're gonna love. And if you haven't done so already, consider hitting that subscribe button right here. It's super easy to do, and I would love it if you joined the DIY Niner family. And to all of my DIY Niners, I just want to remind you once again that you are more powerful than you know. We'll see you next time. Bye.